Okay, amazing. I've never been accused of being quiet, so I think we're gonna be okay. Um, it's weird because we got rid of the echo at some point, but then it returned. I think it's magic. Um, of course, Dean Spade needs no introduction. He is an amazing human organizer. And scholar. He is author of Normal Life, Administrative Violence, Critical Trans Politics, and the Limits of Law. And of course, the enormously popular and important Mutual Aid, Building Solidarity During This Crisis and the Next. He has worked for 20 years on trans liberation, prison abolition, and so much more. I'm excited to call him a comrade and a friend, and really excited to share this space today. Welcome, Dean. We wish you were with us, but we're excited to share space with you in whatever form uh,
I wish I was
works.
with you too.
um, Great. John, do you want me to pause or should I keep going? No, it's okay. 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 I just wanted to start by gushing about the book a little bit. I think I absolutely love the book, Dean. And I will say, since it's such a personal book, I'll say that it's come at exactly the right time in my own life, having, gone through a breakup in the fall and being in a place to sort of reconsider how I approach relationships, but also being in this movement and being in a moment of intense frustration and burnout. And in those moments is often when we see, as you say in the book, folks not living up to their values or not living according to their values in how they treat one another in movement spaces. So I think this book is enormously helpful. It was helpful for me personally. It's helpful, I think, for the movements that we are trying to build. And I'm just really, really grateful that you wrote it. It's really just an incredible piece. And I will say that it's interesting because I think a lot of us are rightfully, I think, skeptical of the self help genre because it is often advice from people that we don't trust, and whose values we don't share and who just make us feel worse about ourselves. Try seem to be encouraging us to sort of like gamify our self growth and gamify our relationships. And this is the exact opposite of that. We as leftists deserve self-help too. And so it's really nice to get it from a voice that we trust, from a comrade, and someone who has been such a dedicated organizer. I think some of the themes in this, and I also want to share that I think one of the ways that this comes through, these political commitments come through, is that the book is deeply concerned with ethics. It is not a sort of how to justify doing whatever you want book. It is a book that takes very seriously our interdependence and our obligations to one another and the development of an ethical system in the ways that we treat one another, especially in community. Um, and then it's just so deeply practical. I feel like if you were here, you'd see that I've like dog eared 1,000 pages, which of course makes it less useful, as I tell myself. Um, but I know that it's a book that I'm going to be coming back to over and over. As you say very poignantly in the book, that growth is a spiral staircase. And so there's a constant kind of return, there's a constant back and forth that happens. Um, Thank you. I prepped a few questions to ask you. I want to pause and just check that you can hear me and that you're you're still with us.
It's
Okay.
pretty hard for me to hear you unless you're right at the mic for something.
Okay.
Whatever we changed to get rid of the echo made you really quiet. But yeah, if you hold it there, then I'll be more likely to hear you. Yeah.
I got you.
Thank you.
This is better then. Okay.
Way better.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Um, Okay, amazing. So I wanted to ask I wanted to start with the classic question of like, how did you come to write this book? Why this book? Um, uh, like, I just kind of listen. I think it's so useful, but uh, take me through the journey of the decision to write this book.
Yeah. Also, just like thank you so much for having this conversation with me, and thank you for reading this book, and thank you to John and Dana and everybody for making this event happen. I'm so sad I'm not there with you in person. Um, I mean, there's a few origins to this book. Like one is just like, like everyone else, I'm out of my mind, and I've needed to use a lot of tools to like show up to our movements and people I love, um, in the ways I've wanted to. I've had the hard lessons of seeing myself not show up the way I wanted to throughout my life. So I have like relentlessly used like all of the worst self-help tools out of desperation, kind of holding my nose while I'm reading them, and often sharing things with friends and people in the movement from them, but having to kind of interpret it for people, because I'm like, I can't really hand you this thing I just read that's so openly ableist or racist or imagines the good life as like being skinny and owning property and being white. Like I just can't endorse a lot of these tools and literatures, but there is something in them often that's about self-awareness or introspection, or identifies like a pattern that is actually happening for a lot of us, that can be really relieving to find out that it's a pattern and that it's not just you, and that there are ways to like work with it. And so I had this like idea of just trying to create something that would translate a bit of it out. And also I would listen to like, especially like read stuff or like listen to Buddhist podcasts or podcasts about psychology or whatever, and just like be like, these people are missing the core thing. They're missing the conditions that make us all so miserable, right? Like it's like you're talking about sex and romance without talking about patriarchy and racism and colonialism. Like you're talking about people feeling inadequate and not talking about capitalism, white supremacy. Like, like this is it ends up being like victim blaming and very individualizing. So I really wanted to shift that. And then the other piece of it, of course, is I've spent, 25 years in our movements, and just seeing so much important, beautiful work fall apart because of the like basic relational skills that we lack, because we've, all been immersed in this culture, which gives people the opposite of useful moves towards collectivity and collaboration and trust and care, and so like just noticing again and again the same patterns. And one part of that, of course, is that people seem to really act their worst in romantic and sexual relationships, and that so many of our movement projects and groups fall apart because of that behavior. Um, so I think I wanted to like write something. It was originally a much longer self-help book that had other topics, and it just got too long. So I'm going to publish like another one later, that's more about like the work and like the other collaborative pieces. But this piece is just a sex and love part, partly because I thought people would be more willing to pick it up if it was about sex, but also because of the level of damage that I think that area does to us, and like to everyone's lives. Like obviously, like the people that are most likely to hurt you and kill you are people you have that somehow that kind of relationship with. And so many people that we all love are like locked up because of things in those relationships, or isolated because of things in those relationships, or in different kinds of harm's way. So it feels very like urgent, to me, as an area of like um, dysfunction for most people, and a lot of pain and a lot of self blame. You know.
Yeah, you use in the book the concept, like the sort of metaphor of the pendulum swing, right? And I think we often have, in our movements, we think, okay, all of this advice is sexist, ableist, etc., which it is, but then there's a sort of pendulum swing to say like, okay, so do whatever you want, right? Which or like, and so I think this is a really that fundamentally there is still this like commitment to working on yourself and on your relationships, but from a place that recognizes the structural conditions that make that incredibly difficult and painful, and that stand in our way. So I really appreciate that, and appreciate the way that you've framed this. My first question is about one of the antagonists of the book, which is the romance myth. This is a sort of major theme that you come back to often, and I wanted to ask you to tell our audience about what that is and how you think it influences how we behave in these relationships.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a term that I think I picked up from like 70s feminists. I don't know where I first read it, but it's an idea I've always had in my mind. I feel like there was some time when I saw like this 70s feminist image. It was like a collage, maybe it was in like a feminist newspaper, and it was like these two white straight people walking through, what I imagine to be Central Park, holding hands in the autumn, and then they had like pie, like they'd like collaged like pie faces, you know what I mean? And just like fuck this, Like there's a sense I got young that like feminism meant letting go of a set of fantasies that are actually traps, especially for women, but really for everybody, about like what a good life is, how you become worthy, people destroying themselves over like beauty and thinness and all of these wanting. And then the romance to me is romance is like when there's a mystique, like people think owning a house will make me safe and happy, or having the right kind of partner, the right kind of body, like all of that is kind of this mystique. And specifically when it comes to like sex and dating and love, there's like an idea that like this is the most important relationship. If you could just get this relationship, you'd be happy. If you don't get it, there's something wrong with you or your life and you'll never be happy. You should like ditch everything else for this. Like you should ditch your friends, you should ditch your politics and your projects and like just focus on this. People get like super isolated. And then people have like really unrealistic romantic ideals like that, if we're dating, you'll be able to read my mind. You'll think the same things are normal that I do. You'll want to like advance our relationship in the exact same escalator that I do. And like if you don't, there's something wrong with me or you. You'll be able to like all of our sex should just be like natural and easy. We should never have to work on anything. Like, this kind of stuff that makes people full of resentment. And makes most romantic relationships like places where people really get really entrapped or feel really dead or are really harsh towards their lovers. Like, um, also the idea that like romance, like it's like, oh, if Cupid's arrow strikes me, there's nothing I can do. I have to pursue it, which I could use to justify like unethical behavior or like giving you attention you don't want. Like it's used, all throughout our culture. There's a lot of elements to it, and what I find is that like even people who are very politically astute, when it comes to our very personal lives, often believe these things. And we think that these are our feelings. And actually, it's just a cultural mythology of control, like the same one that tells you that owning property will make you safe and that you shouldn't share with others, like the same stuff, but it feels like it's mine. And it feels so personal, and maybe it feels shameful, or it feels I feel entitled to it, and I feel like I can demand things of my lovers. And even if for people who are like asexual, aromantic, like this myth is affecting so many of our social circles and our activist circles that I think it's affecting everyone, regardless if they identify with it or not. And so just having a name for it, like my hope for this book would be that people would just like have some names for these things, whether or not they read the book, even if they just screenshot something or tell their friend about it or whatever, so that when it's coming up, we could be like, oh, hey, Iman, I know you just fell madly in love. Like, don't disappear, friend. Like, stay in touch. Like, we know we all tend to isolate. Don't go to Love Island. Like, we could just give each other, like, be a little bit of like a support to each other. Or like, oh, hey, I know you broke up. Like, that person's still someone in our community. Let's not, you know what I mean? Like, whatever, all those reactive places that this myth, or if if I'm telling you about my lover and I'm like, he doesn't want to move in together and I do, and he must not love me. You can be like, well, Dean, actually, remember, like everyone's got different things they need, and maybe you guys can figure out what you do want to do together. Like, I just feel like we could all use better support from ourselves and each other. What I don't want people to use this book for is to like weaponize it against each other. This book is about a gentle care that we do with ourselves with this kind of information and with our friends. It's not like for me to go around the community being like other people are messed up in these, and I really tried to write it that way. Like maybe I might have mentioned this to you when we talked, but one of the first interviews I did, somebody asked me why I didn't use the term toxic masculinity in the book. And I really had to think about it. Like, yeah, toxic masculinity is a real thing, like We see it in our movement circles. We see it in individual relationships. I was like, why didn't I use that term? And the reason is because this book, like if I was going to use the term toxic masculinity, it would be kind of a like, this is happening in this group, or Eman, you're doing this toxic masculinity. I'd say it to somebody else. But if I were to look inside myself at my behavior, it won't be labeled toxic masculinity in there. I may be doing it out here, but what it feels like in there is fear of abandonment or fear of engulfment, or, like what happens inside us. This book is about like us dealing with our stuff in a compassionate way. We also, of course, need to label patterns of abuse and stuff in our community spaces, but this book is really like not the labeling and judging vibe. It's the like, of course we all have that stuff inside us. There's nothing wrong with you, and you can make some choices about whether or not to act on some of the things that are actually cultural scripts that are not, they're not really ours.
I found that so refreshing in the book, and I think that there are multiple points in the book where you remind readers not to weaponize a certain tool that you're presenting, not to use it in this way that basically reproduces carceral logics, or logics of punishment and blame, and effectively just like labeling members of our community as disposable, or as people to sort of be excised from movement spaces. And so I really appreciated that. You talk about abundance a lot, and this is kind of me asking, what, when we let go of the romance myth, right? What do we get? What is it that we are aspiring to replace it with? Maybe replace is the wrong term, but I think about abundance as this recurring theme in the book. And I wanted you to talk more about that and what you were envisioning for folks instead of clinging to this romance myth.
Yeah, that's such an interesting frame. I really appreciate that. No one has said that to me. I think that the romance myth is about scarcity. It's like there's a man shortage, and like if you'll die alone if you don't, blah blah blah, and you should stay in a terrible relationship because no one else will love you, or you should compete with your friends for the best date, or you should ditch your friends because this person wants to hang out. It's about insecurity and scarcity, and really fomenting that in us. And it leads to us all just like not being like as right on towards our friends or lovers or like people in our community as we could. And so to me, the opposite, I talk in the book about like I want us to treat our friends like our lovers and our lovers like our friends. Like treating our friends like our lovers means like the specialness. Like let's have a friend anniversary, let's have sleepovers, let's give each other sweet gifts, let's write mail, let's make our friendships special and revered and weighted with tender meaning, the way we might with a romance. And then treating our lovers like our friends is like, with our friends, we're more likely to like want the best for them rather than wanting to control them. We're more likely to be interested in like a consensual, like, I want to find out where you really want to go to dinner, Eman. I'm not trying to be like my way or the highway. People really get highly critical, very narrow, very threatened by their lovers' other activities and connections. Like I talk in the book about like a kind of promiscuous support system I want us to all have, whether you are sexually promiscuous or not. I want like less exclusivity, like in general. So like a lot of people are just isolated if they have a lover with like that person's the only person they're getting emotional support from or talking to about their family of origin or their problems at work. But instead, what if we all had like lots of really deep relationships, and I could be like, Iman's the person I really want to talk to about things that happened in my childhood, this one particular thing we share, and Angelica is the person I really want to talk to about what it's like to be a law professor and the troubles and difficulties in my workplace, and this person is somebody who I can relate to about the specific kind of organized work you're doing, and this person shares my body image issues, and this person likes to talk about the same kind of sex stuff I do, and like just like, and that your lover doesn't have to be everything to you, and neither does any one of your friends. And it's not a threat, that we all need lots of support. And this to me feels so much more right now because everyone's doing so badly. Everything is so awful, and we're under so much threat, and we're so tired, and we're so scared appropriately. And there's so many people in crisis. And so the first 5 people I call when I'm in crisis might already not be, they're already caring for someone in crisis, or they're also sick, or they also got arrested or whatever, And so how do I have such a robust support system, different kinds? Like, also, we all need to know some neighbors, because sometimes the lights go out and so does the phone service. We all need, as many different kinds of support as possible, which is really different than the idea of putting all your eggs in one basket, or even one friend basket. And I will say, a lot of people have said to me when I say this, well, what about introverts? And what about people who are shy? Or what about people who just are like, I don't really like other people? And I think right now, the answer to that is we have to find a way. We just all actually need people, whether or not we like them or it's easy, or comfortable. Like, we have to find, we have to, I think it'd be good to have support systems, like support groups for people who would like to go to a support group for introverts, run by introverts, about how to get enough support, or, like, you know what I mean? Like, whatever it takes to, because yeah, like, not every space is everybody's jam. Like, I'm not going to go to a space where we all have to, like, go around in a circle and do a dance move. Like, that is not going to be fun for me. Although I have been to that meeting many times, as I'm sure you all have, right? And every other kind of cute facilitation trick, I will be there for it. But that's not, like, like, we all have cultural preferences, but also we just need people, and we can also state our preferences in spaces and be like, or in relationships, and be like, this works better for me. That's like a really loving way to connect, instead of just being like, they didn't already know how it works for me, I gotta split. Anyway, I think that part of the abundance I'm talking about is people feeling that we just live in the most isolated culture of all time. Like, more of us live alone than ever. More, we pay more for everything, and we work more because, like, rents are high and, like, food is high. Like, we literally work more hours a day than people did. Like, I've heard that we work a month more a year than Americans did in the 1960s. There's only 12 months in the year, so that's wild, right? So, like, really, like, we commute an enormous amount. Like, people are very isolated, and then used to that, and think that that's the only comfortable way. And we kind of have to, like, wiggle our way out of that however we can, because so, I mean, Tourmaline years ago, must have been 15, 20 years ago, Tourmaline said to me that isolation was the most dangerous thing. And it's true, because if you get sick and you're isolated, it's worse. If you're being harassed and you're isolated, it's worse. If you're being abused by your partner and you're isolation makes whatever bad thing you go through more dangerous. So this kind of abundance is like a social abundance, many kinds of connection at many levels.
Thank you. I think, yeah, I really resonated with all of that in the book, and it felt, that it felt very hopeful, to reassert that we have these resources that we can build, that we have these support systems that we can build, and we just kind of need to invest in them. And I'm not sure if you can hear the crowd, but people were very amused by the introvert support group idea. I think happily amused. I want to ask you about some of the behaviors that you talk about as being particularly harmful to movements. One of the themes that comes up is gossiping and campaigning, and I wanted to ask you to talk more about that. And it's interesting, with gossiping. I come from a Muslim background, and there's like so much stuff about gossip, and it's considered like eating the dead flesh. It's considered like cannibalism, like you're eating the dead flesh of your brother if you talk about that. And like, it's a very there's a very intense taboos around gossip, and but it's something that I think I've started to see more and more conversation about what gossip does for our, especially organizing spaces, and so I wanted to hear you reflect on that. What is gossip? Why shouldn't we do it? What does it do when we sort of let it reign free? And yeah, so I'm trying to retain that without like my mother's voice in my head being like being like, hellfire.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've heard feminist articulations of what's good about gossip, and that, like, women are often blamed for gossip in different subcultures, and there's a, and that like actually gossip can be like a care circuit, even like, hey, do you all know that guy, don't go home with that guy, he's dangerous, like, there can, so I want to separate useful practical information and care for people, like, oh, hey, Mon, do you know our dear friend is in the hospital, something like that, right? Let's both support her. That's different than what I think most of us do, which is we're very afraid of direct feedback. We don't give it and we don't receive it very well. And I think it's actually one of the most dangerous things in our movements. And so then rather than telling other people that I'm frustrated that you are late to our meetings, or that you didn't do your task, or that something about our roommate situation or whatever, I gossip about you. Or in our movement, something people do a lot is they don't even say the content. They're just like, oh, Iman's fucked up. And there's no, so then, especially with new people in the group, or they'll say that group is fucked up. Oh, Haymarket's fucked up. Like, and it's like, people don't know why. And they feel like they're supposed to like shun something, but they don't even know what the content is. And there's like kind of fear of belonging. And it can turn people away from our movements. And it can also cause like all of this disorganization of trust, instead of just like, yeah, if you're joining this group and like Dean and Iman don't get along, because they used to live together and they had a difficult roommate situation and they're working on it or whatever. But like, instead of this kind of, the other piece, the campaigning piece, and that is really important to me, is when we break up as roommates or lovers or whatever, an activist collaboration, and then I go around and I need everybody to know that you're bad and to exclude you. And that is so disorganizing. It's so parallel to like COINTELPRO stuff. It's really, really bad. And it's one of the things I'm hoping the book does is offer us all the chance to remind each other it's not actually satisfying. So I see this a lot. I could say to you directly, hey, Mon, that didn't work for me, or I thought that was ableist or whatever, transphobic or something. But instead of directly talking to you or DMing you, I go and post about you. I'm looking for some kind of emotional satisfaction from like the internet as a whole. Not surprisingly, I'm not going to feel it. It's unlikely I'll feel it. Not to mention that it's, if my satisfaction comes from seeing somebody else in my community taking down, if you're the mayor, fuck yeah, humiliate the mayor all day long, the arms company, the university president. But it's like we forget in our communities to discern the difference between somebody else in our movement who we could give feedback to and try to influence. It doesn't mean you'll listen to me the first time. Most of us need to be told something by like 20 different people before we listen. So feedback isn't like an immediate satisfaction always, but I know it's worthwhile for me to tell Iman, who I know shares my values, something that I think you're doing that maybe doesn't seem values aligned. So I think the piece with gossip is like, why am I saying this to this person? Most of us need to learn confidentiality. I find that if I do tell someone, I see this all the time, like someone, you tell somebody else, oh, Dean did this thing, I didn't like it, or Dean's been giving me the cold shoulder at the meetings. And then they come tell me, or they tell somebody else who tells me, like, everybody just stop. Like, if you may need to have a private conversation where you talk through your relationship with another organizer, and the person who you have that conversation with should not say it to anybody else. Like, that's one way you can get emotional support without it becoming gossip. So I feel like this piece around confidentiality, am I campaigning? And if you're supporting me and I'm really upset, you can help remind me that campaigning is not effective and that I probably won't be satisfied. Right now, I may feel vengeful about something or want someone else to be embarrassed, but let's not go with that. Like, it's okay to have that feeling, but let's go with what would actually make you safer or more tuned into the other things in your life that are working better, or feel more supported, or is this telling you that you need to pursue something else, but not like, I'm going to feel better through campaigning. Yeah.
I think a lot about, we're always like, oh, the ops, the ops are here. And sometimes I think about our movements and I think we don't even need ops. Like, the FBI doesn't even need to waste money on ops because we're doing it, we're doing it to ourselves. And I think one thing that I often wish people would do is stop and think, like, how will this action that I'm taking affect this work that I've helped build, right? Like, let's like follow this through. Like, what happens next, right? And it's sad how infrequently that happens, but also that it seems like some of this behavior has become infused into our movement culture, such that even folks who are not values aligned with it, right, might just kind of do it out of a new set of instincts that we've kind of collectively developed that are very harmful.
I think part of what's happening too is that we have political rationales for our feelings. And there's usually both things are happening, right? So both somebody did say something racist or transphobic or ableist, or they are, or they are doing something that I would classify as like liberal and not in solidarity with certain people, whatever. And I'm activated. So this book is about being like, can I know I'm emotionally activated? It doesn't mean the content isn't true, but we all think we're these like little logical robots, and that the content, whatever the content that's flowing through the head, that it's like this stone cold truth, without knowing it's all, there's something else happening here. Like I feel betrayed. I'm missing belonging. Sometimes there's like a historical thing happening. I'm feeling the way I felt in my family or at school, or in my religious community. Like there's all these other layers, and if I don't know that, I think most of the bad behavior that's tearing us up, people aren't seeing the emotional level. It's not that the political level isn't happening, but both things are happening. Of course I'm going to have an emotional reaction to these sustained experiences of living in this kind of society. But there's almost like, because we're like anti-emotional in like this masculinist way or whatever, there's like, you can't admit that you're having an emotion. It has to be like, it's just stone cold politics. And that's why it's okay for me to tear down this person, because I'm saving us all from people like that, And it's just like, actually, we're all wildly imperfect. We're making a million mistakes. It's mostly impersonal, right? Like the mistakes I'm making in this group, or that I made in our conversation, or when I didn't text you back, or when I seemed rude, are probably have nothing to do with you. And like, and also it's all going to change. I feel this way right now. Later I'll feel another way. I mean, I wish everyone could have the experience I've had. People who I hated and wanted to destroy 20 years ago in the movement now are like the only other person who still hates gay marriage. Like, and they're like, I'm like, oh, I love you. Remember remember the sweet times we lived before homo nationalism, whatever. Like, it changes. It all arises and passes away. And what does it mean to really, I've been really just doing this lately. It's impersonal, it's imperfect, it's impermanent. Everything is impersonal, it's imperfect, it's impermanent. For me, that really helps me collect myself towards compassion for myself and others with like all of our many mistakes.
Yeah, I appreciate you. I could talk to you forever, but I know that our group, and I also realized that was so excited to ask you my question that we didn't get a chance to hear you read. Do you still want to read, or would you like to open up to the Q&A?
No, let's open up. Yeah.
Q&A. Okay, great. So we're gonna open up to the audience just to give folks an idea of what our plan is. We're gonna do about, let's see. We're going to do about like 15, 20 minutes of Q&A, and then Dean is going to introduce a small group activity for us, and then we'll break out into a small group because we're all movement folks and we can't not have a small group activity. What was that, John? Sure. Okay. Sounds good. So gather your questions and yeah. And I think there's not a way to turn up audio, right, John? Turn up game volume here. Yeah. Is on my computer in that room. All right, I can do that. Okay. John and Dana, thank you so much for having me.
Sorry. Thank you all for the imperfect, impermanent. That's us right now. We're living through it. Thank you. I will walk around with the mic. So, who wants to start us off? All right. Yes. I feel like I'm on a game show.
Is this, I was right out there, but this is where I can like ask a question, right? Okay, great. Is it on? Can you hear me? Okay, great. I actually had a question that I wanted to ask you that you asked in the book. I think it was at the end of chapter 3. I hope I'm going to remember this. It was. No, let me get the book real quick. Hold on just a minute here. Chapter 3, it was about how disposability culture and the romance myth and scarcity mentality shows up in our breakups. And I wanted to, hear you talk about that. I reflected a ton on it. I wrote a paper basically on it. I'm not a student. I just did it for myself. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on it.
Oh my God, it's so delightful to me to think that anybody uses their reflection questions. Thank you for using them. Yeah, I mean, I think the romance myth, one of the things it does is it creates a lot of fear and binary thinking for us. So it's like you're the love of my life, or like you're an asshole and a piece of trash, and you know what I mean? Like you never loved me. It's like we're just very reactive. It's like if you and people even before they break up, while they're in the relationships, I talk about the romance cycle in the book, and it's like at the beginning, I'm just like, oh my God, the sun rises and sets with Eman, and there's no one better. And Eman is the most gorgeous and the most brilliant. Well, this is just true of Eman, right? But I selectively don't notice anything that's going to be a rub between us. And we're both just like cooking the most gorgeous meals for each other and giving each other the cutest presents and having the most athletic sex. And then at some point, we don't sustain that and we disappoint each other. And that move of kind of projecting that Iman will give me like all the love I never got from my parents, or is the person who finally understands me. We can do this with a friend, a lover, with a whole group. This will be the first place that I'll really be seen and heard. And then when we cross that threshold, where oftentimes it's when we kind of feel like we actually landed this in one way or another. Iman's my partner, or Iman's my best friend, or I'm really part of this group, whatever. Now I'm just like, oh my God, this group didn't think of every single need I have. Or Iman sometimes is tired or wants to hang out with someone else or has a backlog of work because of how we've been spending too much time together, or like whatever. And then it's like, you are so disappointing and you misled me and you are betraying me. Like we kind of go to these places, and sometimes that's where people break up, or those kinds of feelings can come up. And that can really, I also think that also like dating apps make this worse, because there's a feeling that and social media, there's a feeling that there's like an endless number of people out there. So like, I'm going to trade up. I'm going to get somebody who does get me, like there's a kind of like disposability that's like almost like I'm swiping and I'm shopping for people. It's very, for me, it's like got an anti-Black racism technology vibe to it. Like this kind of turning people into commodities, like the kind of core underlying thinking of this kind of toxic society. And so the disposability comes with that, or like me wanting all my friends to hate my lover or my ex, and like people really using that kind of campaigning. And at the same time, the feeling that the scarcity feeling, like there's not enough love. Like if people care for Iman, now they can't care for me. Now that we're broken up, I feel like all of that can really go together. And also the thing where people don't break up with people because like no one will ever love me again. I'm not lovable enough. Insert beauty standards, insert standards about wealth, like whatever the things are, the kind of like categories of worthiness that the shopping for partners thing does. I'm just like, how can we shed, coolness hierarchies? Oh my God, in our organizing, how can we shed coolness hierarchies? We have to love people, even if we don't want to be like, even if they're not the one we would pick out of the like magazine ad, you know what I mean? Like how can we like people even though like they communicate differently than us, and their aesthetic is different, they're different age than us. Like we need to make huge movements full of people who like feel loved and cared for in the movement and take huge risks together. And instead we're like, I don't know, would I like, do we listen to the same music? Like this can't be the only, you know what I mean? Yes, we get to make decisions about how much time to spend with different people, but we also have to kind of move past this kind of criticism that feels like a feature of our current scarcity society.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much for the wisdom you've shared so far. I was wondering if you have any thoughts on interracial relationships, both friendships and romances. I find that race is very taboo and difficult to talk about, even with, or maybe especially with, the people we care about most. I feel like the framework is like it's either a call out or you don't mention, it. So I'm just curious if you have any thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great example of how we're not good at giving and receiving feedback. Like I think as a white person, I see like white people so terrified of receiving any feedback about our racism, and it's like, well, just doing it all the time over here. So I have to be, like, yeah, like I want my friends and lovers and people I'm collaborating with to let me know, right? And to really that's hard to really sincerely want that instead of to want to look good, which is like most I feel like sadly like most of our like anti-racism training, anti-oppression training for years, for decades has been oriented towards like learning how to say the right thing so you don't get in trouble instead of like actually having a deep interest in a lifelong experience of inquiry about how white supremacy and ableism and sexism, everything is like living through me forever and shaped my entire consciousness in ways I'll never be finished knowing about. I think the way this works best, between people, I mean, things that are useful to remember for feedback. One, just trying to learn to be open to feedback and trying to practice with our friends and lovers, giving it sooner, like giving smaller feedback instead of waiting till it's the blow up. Can be really useful, and like telling each other that we want that and starting it with everything, like not just with our experiences of racism, but like the dishes, or like I kind of felt like you're really pushy this time when I didn't want to go, or like just anything. Like I really wished you'd called me when and asked about my grandmother, or whatever. Like just the every opportunity to practice giving and receiving feedback, and to like notice that it builds trust when someone hears you and you like it, instead of we fear that it'll split us up forever, but actually it's like, oh, it's amazing to be heard. And part of that is practicing not being defensive. Like even if I feel the fear coming up, can I remember to like repeat back what I heard them say and not offer any counter evidence, but instead just be like, I hear you saying this sounded like this and it really hurt you, and that's really hard, and I really don't want to hurt you, and I really want to think about how I can act differently next time. Like just really doing that, remembering that script even when I'm like, oh my god, does this mean I'm a racist, like, or whatever the thing is that I'm fearing right then, which is huge in our culture. I think that practice is like the way forward for us all. And the other thing, especially if you're on the like, if you're white and the person talking to you is a person of color, or if you're in that side of the power dynamic, like not getting caught up in how they delivered it. Like not criticizing if they were, maybe part of what they said wasn't true, or part of what they said was mean. Like just being like, the first thing to do is to look for what's grounded here and like acknowledge and care about it, instead of starting with, but she came to me this way. Like just not asking, people are allowed to be imperfect, and we can still be like, what's important here. And the one thing I try to remember, especially in organizing, if someone's giving you feedback, it's because they think you're important. And you may not know you're important, and you may not feel important. Most of us feel very unimportant, and we feel self-conscious and like we're doing it wrong and we're imposters. But it's actually like a sign that they think you're important, And so like you are, and they're trying to influence you. And like we want to be permeable to others' influence. It doesn't mean every single thing everyone says is grounded and I have to believe it. Absolutely not.
Hello. Hi. Just double checking. Can you hear me okay? Can I get a thumbs
Can you
up?
make it a little louder?
Okay, cool. Can you hear me okay like this, or no dice?
I can hear you, but it's really quiet. So as loud as you want to be, I love it.
Okay. So I was wondering to hear you talk about sort of listening to you describe the situation around like treat your lovers like your friends like your lovers. I'd love to hear you talk about how that interacts with like compulsory monogamy kind of culture, things like hierarchical polyamory, like these kinds of different relationship structures. Were you able to
Yeah.
hear that?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry. There's just like a siren at the same time, but I did hear you. Yeah, this is a great question. I mean, one thing I will say that I said in the book that I think surprised some people is I think there is no better or worse kind of relationship in terms of our politics. You can treat somebody terribly in any relationship, monogamous, polyamorous, relationship anarchy, hierarchical. Like, so that's good to remember is like that. Like, whenever people get into a thing in our communities about there being a right way to be in relationships, I really want us to, what we really are looking for is a non coercive society, really far from that right now. And so we want to try to avoid new forms of coercion and judgment and instead really figure out if people can find out what they want and then actually communicate it to one another, which is almost impossible. Like most of us don't know whether we really want something or not, and we're terrified to say it. We're terrified to ask for more time while we're figuring it out. When people say no to us, we like don't listen to them. We try to pressure them like all the time. It's like super normal. So that's one thing I'll say about it. And yeah, for me, one thing I've talked about a little bit, I've been doing book events with the person who wrote Polyamory for Dummies in the For Dummies franchise, Jamie Grant. She's like a longtime movement activist. Can you believe that like somebody we like got that gig? It's like pretty amazing. And one of the things we've been talking about a lot is a lot of the polyamory literature, I think, pushes people towards like it'll always like have a list of like boundaries you could have in your relationship that are like um don't have sex on the first date, like don't, things like that. And my personal approach to this kind of liberation is I'm trying to get free from the idea that other people's sexuality is a threat to me, like that, my friends and lovers sexual choices and activities are dangerous for me. So I really encourage people to move away from using rules to feel safe when they're doing open relationships, right? Like, because for me, it's actually feeding the misunderstanding that I got from our culture that other people's sexuality and expression is a threat to me. I'm struggling. It's hard. I'm a super jealous person. I'm really struggling always to remember that my safety and well-being doesn't come from controlling others' sexuality. So that I think is a complex one for those of us who choose to practice consensual or like ethical non-monogamy is like moving away from some of what the polyamory literature has directed, that I think is difficult. And then just yeah, like just trying to like let people try what they want to try, share what we're trying, and that move towards like having robust support systems and not trying to control other people. Like those things I think are like our best, and not trying to stigmatize other people. And also I think our movements are inadequately pro sex. I get a question a lot actually. People are like, should our group ban people from having sex with each other who are in the group, or say that if you have sex with somebody else in the group, you have to tell the group. And people are trying to deal with fear about, about unethical behavior, but the problem is that it just means people hide what they're doing, and then they're more likely to be in an abusive or dangerous situation because someone can now use against them also this secret that we're keeping from our friends, right? So we just want to really be like, what if we in our groups we did talk about how sticky and complicated sexual and romantic behavior often is, and we talked about how to be more ethical and give and receive feedback, and we did consent exercises or whatever. We tried to build skills in our mutual aid group, in our book group, in our direct action group, but it wasn't oriented through trying to just stop people from being sexual, which of course, like that has never worked. Um, but I think that shows how much fear people have about how badly it frequently goes,
Okay, maybe one more, and then we'll do a small group activity. Okay. Oh, is that a hand? Yes.
So, I think a lot of this book makes a lot of sense. However, I think that there is an issue, I think, in our movements with narcissists kind of using the movements to like build their image while like hurting people behind closed doors. And so like some of the conversations about like gossip and campaigning, like sometimes it's just telling the truth. Where you were like suffering in silence before. And I don't know, it's hard to like give honest feedback and continue to give honest feedback when people don't care to change. So while I'm generally hopeful that everybody has the ability to change. My life has recently taught me that that's not always the case. And so having this approach causes more harm sometimes, but not always. So I think that it's good to go in with, the implication that everybody means well, but there are a decent amount of people in our movements that don't, and generally mean to cause harm.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I mean, one of the things I don't think this is the exercise I chose to do today in the small groups, but one that I've been doing is like, what are the things we tell ourselves when we're convincing ourselves not to give somebody feedback? Because we all do that. Why do we all give each other so little feedback? It's like, so I'm like, what goes through my head when I'm not going to give someone feedback? And sometimes it's all the experiences I've had of giving people feedback and having them not change, right? Because most of us need to hear things often from so many people. One of the ways this looks in the abolition movement is that when we're trying to do a transformative justice approach to harm, we notice who people listen to, right? So if I've been consistently abusing lovers in our community and people are coming together around me to figure out how to make me stop, they might be, well, like, Dean's not listening to his lovers and he's also not listening to their friends, but maybe he'll listen to Eman because he really admires Eman, or maybe he'll listen to this mentor he has, or maybe people do a lot of trying to figure out like, what is how do we have a lot of people give the feedback, or and I think that's true. Like I used to do a lot of like evaluations in groups, like where groups that had a staff and stuff that were doing mutual aid work, and I'd find like there'd be somebody, we would give the evaluation every 6 months or a year, and it's like the seventh time they hear that they're like have trouble listening, they like start to change their listening skills. You know what I mean? So part of what's hard about feedback is it's collective. Like I'm giving this feedback, not knowing if it's going to make a difference in the person's behavior soon, and hoping that many people give them feedback over time, and also hoping this is the time that I'll get to see the difference and I'll get a real apology and some behavior change. Like it's this kind of like we're like jumping off a cliff of the unknown. Like maybe if I tell them something will change for us, and maybe it won't. And deciding it's still worth it, or getting support to figure out if there's a way for more people to do it, or just, if you think their defensive reaction is going to like really fuck you up, sometimes that really does, depending on what it was, like getting enough support around the experience. But yeah, like it's real. People need to hear things a lot of times. I do notice this a lot with teaching. Like when I teach abolition over all these years, I have students who sometimes have to basically like have a tantrum in class where they tell me all the reasons it's wrong and I'm bad and I'm denying that violence happens and I'm whatever. And that's actually like after being heard saying all that, then they open up to the ideas. Like sometimes people act their worst before transformation. It's so hard to know. And so there's kind of like a faith practice in here that like people deserve feedback, that we deserve for ourselves to speak our truths, and that like people are capable of change, but not on our time clock, which is so painful. Sometimes it's someone's sixth breakup from the same behavior before they are like, maybe I shouldn't do that with my lovers anymore, or, sixth friend breakup or roommate breakup. I think, and sometimes people are never going to figure that out on our time clocks. And we need to keep generating our own safety by having boundaries and saying no and getting out of situations that don't work for us. And it's rough, but I think the alternative, which is what we're mostly doing now, of like not saying anything and ghosting or blowing up and then campaigning against them, is not working.
So I think we're going to move to small groups. I'm going to hand this to you.
Great. It's actually, I'm going to hand it right back to Dean, who is going to lead us into the small group activity. But in case we don't get to convene again, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time and for writing this book. and for all the incredible work that you do, and your generosity in movement spaces. It really reflects in this work, and I'm not at all surprised that you would write such a generous book. So thank you so much, comrade.
Thank you so much for doing this with me. It means a lot to me.
Of course.
All right, I'm going to share my screen and take you all through a few things. Can you all see this?
We can.
This slide? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm just going to say a few things about this. What the exercise we're going to do. So one thing I've noticed that is a lot of what drives this book is that it feels like one emotionally activated or reacting person can disorganize any project in our movements, and that's a matter of deep insecurity for our movements. Like, this is a huge problem. If one person's emotional activation can kind of destroy any group or project, we are really fucked. And so we have to figure out how to work on that. And some of the questions that come up for me are, one, how do we build groups, projects, and collaborations that can't be destroyed by one activated person? Like, what would we have to be like as a group to have that not work? Like, what skills do we need to support activated people? And what skills do we need so that when we're really activated, we don't do harm? This is like, for me, this is like the question of the day, after what we've all seen over and over again in our movements. And, you know, we do the most harm, not when we're not out to harm people. When we do harm, we always actually are feeling like the victim. We're like, they did all this to me, and so now it's okay that I'm campaigning, or it's okay that I'm stealing the money, or it's okay that I'm putting this stuff on social media, or it's okay that I'm breaking into this person's privacy, into their phone or into their house, like the kinds of things people do in our movements to each other. And so what's really important about this is we want to look for those states in ourselves. We want to become aware of what it's like when we are aggrieved and victimized and resentful and left out. In those moments, we don't think we're harm doers. We think we're harm receivers. But that's when people do harm. Like, you know, the idea of hurt people, hurt people. There's a lot of great writing about this in the abolitionist movement. Anyway, so that's a really big idea. And I've been doing some workshops around that. And this is just like one little tiny part of that. And then, as I mentioned, we fear that giving each other feedback or admitting mistakes will break our connections, when actually that's what builds trust and deepens relationships. If I'm like, you know what? I think I was acted weird to you yesterday. I'm not drawing attention to it and you didn't notice. I'm showing that I'm trustworthy. Or if I'm like, hey, you were acting pretty weird yesterday when we hung out, and I felt it hurt my feelings, and then you actually hear me, we're going to deepen our relationship. Anyway, so the small group activity I would love to do is having people get into groups of 2. And what I really want to talk about is, you know, if I was doing a longer workshop, I would have us talk about how we act, how we feel when someone is having strong feelings in front of us that aren't about us, and how we support them. And do we join the feelings and are like, yeah, let's get them, fuck those people, you know, join the campaign? Or do we feel like we want to shut down and run away? Or do we feel like we want to give them advice to fix them and shut them up? Or, you know, what are all the ways we were taught, usually in our families or communities, to manage when someone has strong feelings in front of us? But the harder question, even than that, is what fear do I have when someone's having strong feelings at me? Dean, what you said was racist. Dean, the way you run this meeting is messed up. Dean, you're not standing in enough solidarity with this community. Dean, you know, like, Dean, you're a terrible roommate, a terrible friend, whatever the thing is, right? What are the kinds of things that you fear when someone is pointing at you, when someone's activated, right? And you're activated by them, right? Like, what does it feel like? And maybe you can think of some experiences that remind you, like, where do I go? I'm the worst. I'm whatever. And what can I do when someone's freaking out like that at me? What helps in the moment to stay aligned with your values and connect? Like, what can you do when someone's freaking out on you? So these are the 2 questions that I would love to give. I think we have enough time to give maybe like 4 minutes each. So if each person could just kind of like riff on this for 4 minutes, and I think doing it in pairs so that everybody really gets time, instead of putting bigger groups than having some people not get to talk. And then we'll just come back at 10 till, and I'll do a little finishing up. Loved it. I would love if anyone's willing to just hear from two people about anything that came up that you think might be interesting for others to hear.
Awesome. You hear me? Great. Yes. I used to be an extremely reactive person. I had a really hard time when people would come at me with their feelings, any feelings about me, especially though. So I feel like I've done a lot of work in the past couple of years. And one of the things that has really helped me is to, in those moments, take a breath and kind of pull myself outside of myself and be like a third party listening to the conversation and see them as someone that isn't related to me at all, you know, like they're a stranger almost, and listen to them from that perspective instead of my perspective with all of my feelings. That's been helpful. I don't know the how-to on that, but that's what I feel like I experience.
You're practicing impersonal. Sometimes I say, this person is telling me about themselves. Can I just be patient and listen to them tell me about themselves, even though it's through the lens of me, you know? Like, I think that's beautiful. Thank you so much. Somebody else want to share?
All right, one more. Okay.
Yes. So I think one of my biggest fears actually happened to me last year, where somebody came at me with a lot of feelings, but then they shut down and were like, never talk to me again. And boom, that was the end of it. So not getting to process and then being like, oh, can we still show up in community? So yeah, that one has been a doozy.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm so sorry that happened. And I think there's something I talk about this in the book a bit, that we can do processes of apology and forgiveness, even if the person won't engage with us, or even if they're dead. I think that's important. Like, we can change our orientation to somebody even if they won't participate. And I talk about it in the book a bit, but like for me, sometimes it's been important to be like, I'm going to practice compassion towards this person, even though they're not wanting a shift, or they won't talk to me, or every time I show up, they say the same kind of weird things to me, you know? I'm just gonna be like, they're in pain. I want what's best for them. Some people do like a practice, like put them on their prayer list or on their gratitude list, or imagine. I sometimes do a thing where I imagine the person's life path visually is distinct from mine. I'm like, we're on two life paths, and I don't know what's best for them, and I don't know what their actions mean, and it's really none of my business. And if I'm interpreting it too much and making it about me, I'm just going to remember there's so much I don't know about this other person. And especially if I have to see them all the time in organizing or social space, like, just like, how do I move away from focusing on them? You know, there's an exercise in the book called What Else Is True, that's about like, when we get tunnel vision, when we're really freaked out by somebody, or when we're in a fight, or when they did something, or we heard they don't like us, or whatever, you know, they posted about us or something. And like, how to be like, there's so much I don't know about them. Like, what else is true about them that I don't know? They might be going through this or that. What else is true that I do know about them? Like, they also want a free Palestine, or they also care about sexual violence, or like whatever else that, you know, or they were kind to so and so when she was in the hospital, or whatever. And then what else is true about me? Like, other people in this group like me, or didn't say anything in the meeting, so maybe they don't agree or do. I don't know. Or I have this other group that I'm part of that I care about, or this person loves me, or I've had other experiences that have been hard and I've gotten through them. Like, you know, just whatever else, just to move the tunnel vision away from like somebody who's difficult or some situation. That has helped me at times with people when I couldn't get any resolution, or not on my timeline. Okay, so I've been sometimes ending these events by reading a poem that has been useful to me, and I want to just share that with you all before we end, in case it's useful to you. It's just an excerpt of it. And part of what I like about it, I feel like we're just in a really rough time and we're having a hard time. And it's also like a sacred time. Like, I feel like when I listen to the headlines on Democracy Now! In the morning, I'm like, this is like an intense, sacred moment, hearing this brutal stuff. Like, us gathering right now is like so important, and we don't know if we'll always get to do it, and many people can't do it, and it's just like, can we just, yeah, I feel like there's like a ritual ending. I've never felt this way as much as now. So anyway, this poem for me helps get at this balance we're living in right now that's so hard, and it's written in the 70s by a poet named Diane de Prima. Oh, I'll share my screen, then you can see it. And there's a refrain in it, which is "May it continue." And I invite you all to say it with me out loud when I say it if you want. I'm just trying to find, will it let me share my screen? It's so funny. I can't, it's like the only window. Oh, it's the window. Here it is. Okay. So hopefully you're seeing this too. It's called Life Chant. Cacophony of small birds at dawn. May it continue. Sticky monkey flowers on bare brown hills. May it continue. Bitter taste of early miner's lettuce. May it continue. Music on city streets in the summer nights. May it continue. Kids laughing on roofs, on stoops, on the beach, in the snow. May it continue. Triumphal shout of the newborn. May it continue. Deep silence of great rainforests. May it continue. Rolling fuck of great whales in turquoise ocean. May it continue. Clumsy splash of pelican in smooth bays. May it continue. Clean snow on the mountain. May it continue. Rite of birth and of naming. May it continue. Rite of instruction. May it continue. Rite of passage. May it continue. Love in the morning, love in the noon sun, love in the evening among crickets. May it continue. Long tales by fire, by window, in fog, in dusk on the mesa. May it continue. The night music. May it continue. Grunt of mating hippo, giraffe, foreplay for snow leopard, screeching of cats on the backyard fence. May it continue. Without police. May it continue. Without prisons. May it continue. Without marriage, madhouses, high schools that are prisons. May it continue. Without empire. May it continue. In sisterhood. May it continue. Through the wars to come. May it continue. In brotherhood. May it continue. Though the earth seem lost. May it continue. Through exile and silence. May it continue. As with cunning and love. May it continue. As woman continues. May it continue. As breath continues. May it continue. As stars continue. May it continue. May the wind deal kindly with us. May the fire remember our names. May springs flow, rain fall again. May the land grow green, may it swallow our mistakes. We begin the work. May it continue. The great transmutation. May it continue. A new heaven and a new earth. May it Thank you all so much for being with me. Thanks to Eman and our hosts. I recommend this poem as something to use in groups. It's helped me a lot. Hope to see you all again in person sometime soon.
Thank you.